So the second drug that I'm going to be talking about today is cocaine. And I don't know, cocaine really interested me. I don't know too much about drugs, or at least I didn't know too much about drugs before I took this course. But cocaine was always one that I did know about, if that makes sense. Like, everyone would always be like, don't take cocaine, cocaine is so dangerous for you. So I always kind of like knew about it. So that's why like this lecture kind of really interested me. So I'll just kind of go over like how it works in the body, and briefly go over like why people take cocaine as well as other drugs simultaneously, like together. So cocaine works on the dopaminergic system. So that means it induces that reward pathway. Cocaine also works as like a local anesthetic. It basically reduces pain like locally if you apply it locally. But that's not for this video because I won't have time for that. So we'll just, get into the drawings again. All right, so how cocaine works. I have my synapse drawn. I'm going to kind of make it look how it did in my previous video. So here we have our vesicles, here we have our presynaptic neuron, here we have our postsynaptic neuron, and we also have our dopamine receptors, D1 and D2, that will, when bound to, increase the reward pathway, the euphoric pathway, or increase euphoria, I should say, is a better term to use. And we've got our dopamine transporters. And we've also got our dopamine, which I'll write up here, which are packaged inside these vesicles. These vesicles are then brought to the active zone, and they release into that synaptic cleft when this presynaptic neuron has an action potential. They bind to the D1 and D2, and then you've got your effects. So now cocaine. Cocaine I'll show in purple. So what cocaine's mechanism of action is that it inhibits this dopamine transporter. So normally what would happen is, with a lot of dopamine in the synapses, these dopamine transporters, their job is to bring in dopamine and bring them back, and kind of recycle them, put them back into the vesicles so they can be reused again. And they do this obviously so that we don't have this increased excitatory stimulation that is happening on our postsynaptic neuron. But with cocaine, we do sort of get that, because cocaine comes and inhibits the dopamine transporters, like so, and this system cannot run. So the dopamine is stuck in the it's not stuck in the presynaptic terminal. It's stuck in the synaptic cleft. And yes, I think that's mainly the system for this one. I'm also going to talk about how other drugs are taken up with cocaine to give sort of this increased reward. And so I'll talk about that next. Okay, so we're going to zoom out a bit. What I'm going to do is draw another diagram. I guess I'll make everything in black again. And we're going to talk about, let's say this is your dopaminergic neuron here, your DA neuron. And it is projecting to... Sorry, I'm back. My mom needed the Wi-Fi password, but here I am again. Okay, so you've got your dopaminergic neuron here. This is in the VTA. You've also got your nucleus accumbens neuron. This is the neuron that it's projecting to, with the D1 and the D2 receptors on it. This is the nucleus accumbens. I'm not going to spell the whole thing. You've also got interneurons, right? Hopefully you can see all this. Oh yeah, I'm going to have to do that a bit. You've got like GABA projections, which are your interneurons. And you've got your prefrontal cortex, which kind of mediates Oh, can you see this? Yes, you can. Prefrontal cortex, which kind of mediates all of this here. Okay, so basically, in fast terms of sort of what's happening, you've got your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is releasing glutamatergic signals, glutamatergic signals onto your GABA interneurons. They're activating these GABA interneurons to inhibit your dopaminergic neurons. So you don't have very many action potentials happening here, right? I think that's how you draw action potentials. Oh, I'm so bad at drawing. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so we've got like a couple action potentials, not very much. And you've got your dopamine, which I'll actually write back up here, dopamine. And you've got just a little bit of dopamine here, which will bind sometimes, unbind, you know. With cocaine, right? This is just sort of a repeat of what we just kind of talked about. With cocaine, you've got your, let me just make this, I don't know how I'm going to draw this. I guess this is your dad. I guess I'll just draw it that way. So you've got your dopamine transporter, and you've got your cocaine inhibiting this, which means that you have prolonged effects of dopamine in the synapse. Now, can this all fit in one? Yes, it can. Okay, so now, basically, if you have any other drug, usually, well, not any other drug, usually it's either, can you see this? Yes, you can. It's either alcohol, or it's cannabis, or let's say like heroin, like an opioid. These can sort of induce the effects, or sorry, they basically can inhibit these GABA interneurons, meaning that you'll have more dopamine and more action potentials to release more dopamine at the synapses, if that made sense. So we'll kind of go through one example. Let's go through heroin as our example. We could actually go through all of them, but I don't know how much time I'm running on, so I'm just gonna go with heroin. Heroin will be, actually we'll do heroin in blue because it's right here. So heroin, we know, binds to mu-opioid receptors. We have two different areas that mu-opioid receptors can be on these GABAergic neurons. They can bind up here. I guess I'll put the mu-opioid, I'll put them in light blue. So these are, actually I'll put it down here just so you can see it, and then I'll put it here. You've got them at your like dendrites, and you've also got them at your terminals. Both of these will basically inhibit this interneuron. Same with this when you have heroin bound. So right now we have heroin and we have cocaine in the system. So they're binding here. And what that does is it basically knocks out these systems here. Then what happens is, because these inhibitory projections are not on this dopaminergic neuron in the VTA, this can release more action potentials. So this is my increase in action potentials, meaning that you have even more dopamine release, which means even more binding. And obviously with cocaine, you have your dopamine transporters not working. So you'll have a lot more dopamine, and all that dopamine will be built up in the synapse for a long period of time. And then from there, you will get an increase in that reward and an increase in that euphoria. So yeah, so that's basically how it works. Can I fit this all in one page? Yes, I can. So yeah, so that's basically how it works, and thank you.